Hello, my name is Dan Briggs. I'm a master's student at Colorado State University studying in the Fish, Wildlife, and Conservation Biology Department. My advisor is Sarah Bambachi, and I'm working on an acoustic research analysis project studying human-wildlife interaction in South Africa, Kruger National Park. The data that was collected for this project was collected by a research student utilizing camera traps, sound capturing devices, and sound emitting devices set in 30 different locations. They were used to capture animal behavior in response to broadcasted human noise, as well as to observe animal behavior in both tourist and non-tourist areas. From this accumulation of data, we were able to observe that animals, both large and small, were coming into these areas and they were having distinct reactions to the sound. Over time, though, some of these animals developed acclimating to the sound to such an extent that they appear to have been using human sound to kind of mask their behaviors and hide their movements, either in the pursuit of prey or in the evasion of predators. From these findings, there's implications that there could be potential for human-wildlife conflict in the future from animals losing their fear of human presence altogether. So my research is hoping to gain an understanding of the time and circumstances required for that acclimation to occur. I entered graduate school after an 8.5-year career as a Marine Corps officer, and for me it was important to get into a field of work that was devoted to protecting and learning how to preserve wild species. I grew up watching nature documentaries and reading books about animals, and what always struck me was the harsh stress that these animals face with regard to the impacts of human-generated factors. I wanted to make sure that my work was tied into something real and relevant to the average person, and this project allows for that in its attempt to better understand how animals acclimate to human noise in both tourist and non-tourist areas. My hope is that by better understanding some of these dynamics, my results will be able to help staff in their attempts to help mitigate human and wildlife conflicts in the future in and around the park. For the majority of my research thus far, I've had access to data that was collected in 2021 at Kruger, and I've had constant consultation with my advisor, as well as the research team that collected the data. Next year in the spring, I'll be planning to make a trip to South Africa to visit the sites in Kruger to get a first-hand account of the landscape and the soundscape that the data was collected in. I would say eye-opening experience for me was just like diving into the data, reading some of the literature, learning about how some animals are acclimated or how certain animals behave when they're presented with the human stimulus. Hyenas in particular were observed to be very suspect initially amongst the larger animals in the area. And so they, just being able to kind of get a better sense of like how these animals are and their personalities and their distinct characteristics that kind of define how they exist in the landscape. One of the primary challenges I've dealt with thus far has been processing the sheer mass of acoustic data that's been compiled over the duration of the data collection period. Listening for the sounds of wildlife is just as challenging as the landscape is diverse in Kruger. Fortunately, I'll be looking to utilize some identification software to help streamline this process. However, it's still been a great experience to kind of familiarize myself with the sights and sounds of the landscape. My advice to grad students is to develop your patience, patience with yourself, patience with the scientific process. This field can be very triggering once you get into the specifics of how humans are impacting the natural landscape and natural ecosystems around the world. So that requires a lot of patience, being patient with your fellow man. And I would say build a strong support network, have hobbies outside of grad school. Don't completely bury yourself in your studies because that can have a negative impact on your sense of self-worth, your sense of self-perception. So you want to bring your well-rounded traits to your job and to your studies, is that will undoubtedly make your research far more grounded and well-rounded.